Hey, good morning, everybody. It's February 2nd. You know what that means, right?
It's Groundhog Day.
That's right. I actually didn't even realize that until just now.
Mhm.
And I'm here with my co-host Rich Ross, and we are in the very state where Punxsutawney Phil will come out of the ground, and then in some I forget how it goes. He sees your shadow, he's scared, which means there's more winter, right?
Yeah, that's what we
Which
need.
Which I think is right. It's not what we need here, because since that big snowstorm a little while back, it's all turned to ice, and walking in my backyard is actually kind of treacherous. But I've always thought that was weird
Yeah.
about Punxsutawney Phil. If he sees his shadow, doesn't that mean it's sunny? But then
Interesting.
we're running inside because there's more winter.
That that's a good question.
Yeah, it was something I think my second grade teacher asked us, and I didn't live in Pennsylvania then. Not that I live anywhere close to Punxsutawney now, at least, but it's something I've always wondered about. And then I've also kind of wanted to kind of let the groundhog know that spring's going to start when it starts. But in any case, here we are, and we don't want to belabor the point too much. If you've joined us this morning live, thank you very much. It's not quite 8 a.m. here on the U.S. East Coast, and we're going to be looking at how the GitHub Copilot CLI can help you plan your next app. I think I might have left the word app out of the title. I'll have to go fix that while we're here. So as you know, if you've been sticking with us on the show, we're working on trying to translate the PizzaBot agents and I think the PizzaBot app itself to .NET applications. That is still work that's ongoing. But we wanted to take a look at this today because there's several apps that we've been talking about working on here, and maybe we can learn to use these tools to help accelerate that. I mean, it's a two-man team here, right? So that's the whole, yeah, that's the whole problem. I mean, Scooter's back there somewhere, but I don't know that people can see him today. So just want to make sure we set expectations for folks. If you're joining us, thanks. And sometimes things are a little bit more straight, like a demo, and sometimes we're going to discuss and try some things, and this is a little bit more of the latter. So
yeah. I think for me, there have been all these tools, and I think that's the important thing when we think about what's there. Just try it, right? Take something you might not know how to do or might not have, thought about using a tool like that to do, and just ask it the question and kind of see where that conversation goes. You may be surprised that it is a tool that helps you solve that problem, whether it because it points you in the right direction or it winds up helping it do it itself. So you just got to play around. We talk about I do a lot of presentations for customers and demos and things. So, well, what's the demo script to this? Like, just get in there and start asking it questions. It'll become very, there doesn't need to be a script, right? Because part of this is that that collaboration interaction for whatever it is you're trying to solve. So, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I'm going to include in the show notes a link to just the very recent .NET AI Community Standup. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the show.
Yeah.
On the .NET channel, DOTNET on YouTube, with Steve Sanderson, who, Steve Sanderson's been an inspiration for a long time. I was very fortunate to sit across from him at dinner one time, but I'll tell you, I mostly listened. Just a ton of great ideas and innovation. I mean, we're talking the inventor of Knockout, which brought two-way binding to web developers in a way that we thought we only had like in desktop frameworks. And this was a long time, it's almost 20 years ago now. It might have even been 20 years. And then, everybody's gasping when they saw Blazor for the first time. So now on the team producing the GitHub Copilot CLI. So,
which I was very shocked at that he moved teams. He seems to, like you said, he's very creative and brilliant mind and all the great things he comes up with, and to be able to see this palette for him and his team to start building things on top of is, I think there's gonna be a lot of change in the space. And often point to this as, it is the oldest Copilot, right? We've had GitHub Copilot around since 2022.
Yeah, well, that's crazy to think.
Right?
Not long.
So,
in any case, yeah.
Yeah.
So there will be a link to that in the show notes. Everybody should definitely go watch it.
Yeah,
No
and
doubt
I'll
in my mind.
share this other link that we'll include in the show notes because I think it is something I came across, kind of this morning as I was flipping through some videos and it kind of got suggested to me. But it is kind of a deep dive on GitHub Copilot, and maybe a deep dive is not what you're ready for yet, but when you are, this essentially gives you there's information about switching it or creating aliases and creating different ways of almost shortcutting the interaction and things you would think of doing inside of command line. So it would increase things that, when you get used to it, would certainly increase productivity. And I think there's a bunch of things in there that we'd want to explore. And I'm trying to find the documentation where a lot of that stuff is listed because I think it's there's some really powerful things that you can kind of do in there. And that was when we did the AI Dev Days back in December. No, That was December.
I think it was December. Yeah,
December 10th and 11th. Yeah. So session from John Lundquist up on that. So we'll put a link to that in the show too.
Cool. All right. So
let's jump to my screen.
Okay. There it goes.
Cool.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we got the terminal up. I was trying to figure out. Sorry, I was like, "What's the blue haze over?"
Yeah, it's the terminal. Let me do this.
I know. It's on.
There we go. This at least got a background going there. So I tried to make a blank background instead of have a picture behind it.
You could pop the font up just a touch. Probably good. And then what always happens with Oh My Posh? Yeah, exactly. So you've been through that too. So
yeah.
Is that you change the size and then you have to hit clear to get the left and rights.
Yeah.
To look good again.
So I will say I've already done the install of this, but I'm in terminal in Posh land essentially. So for me, it's there is a using Winget, there is the GitHub Copilot, and this basically brings in the GitHub Copilot CLI, which is what we want to do here, right? It is a similar, you're in a command line, right? So the interaction is going to be a little different than it would be if we were using VS Code or something like that. But this is how you get installed. 4.0 is the, or 0.4 is actually the latest version that came out over the weekend or Friday-ish, if I remember right. So, and then there's also a pre-release version if you really want to, get out your box of Band-Aids and cut your fingers on things. But just basically doing an install of that will get it into your command line. So from there, I can just say Copilot.
I said in the show notes, it's not like a terminal app that I've used in a long time because, I think we're firmly in the age where when we use command line tools, you type something, you hit enter, it does it. Mm-hmm. This seems to bring up more of an interactive experience, which kind of takes me back to DOS.
A little bit.
Yeah, when Turbo Pascal was an app like this.
Yeah, definitely. And when you think of, I could just hit a slash and I get a whole list of commands that I can, work my way through.
Still very terminal.
It is.
But also interactive, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. So some cool things inside of here just to kind of look at. So one of the things you may initially start to do is that the allow all command. So all tools, all paths, all URLs, or what they shortcut to YOLO.
YOLO. I love it.
So, but you have to be, so we joke about, hey, YOLO, that's fine. But if you give it, essentially access to paths and things, and you say, go figure out what needs to be done. If part of that process needs to delete a file, wipe a drive, those are things that it's going to have access to do. So, you want to be cautious in how much permissions you give an agent like this, especially when it's running in the terminal. VS Code, it's a little more isolated, and it doesn't necessarily have things outside of that sandbox of VS Code, but here it kind of does.
Right, and especially because I think a lot of people run terminal as admin, maybe just by
don't
think about it. Yeah.
And I am not in this case, but that is a good point. So I would get prompted with,
Hopefully.
yeah, exactly. What else is cool in here that we could, so you can turn on and off the experimental features. That's always fun. You can use this to initialize a repository. So we've talked in the past with some of our other Copilot instructions, of being able to, give instructions around the project or create instructions from the project. We're not going to do that for this session, but it may be something that comes up later on. You need to make sure you log into Copilot and whatever account you're using. And typically we have one, but you may have a corporate account that's on your GitHub Enterprise, and that's going to have some permissions and things that you can access as a result of that. Or you might have your personal GitHub Copilot, which is what I'm using here, to be able to access the tools essentially. There's we can look at the list of model context protocol servers. We all know that's very important when we're talking to agents. We can do the list of models. So if I do that, we can see models list. Those are, list isn't supported. What do we say for models then if it's not list? I just say model. Okay. So I could just say model and I get a list of all of the potential models that I could choose from. And I could just basically highlight and select and we're good to go. So that's, the model's important because depending on what you're asking it or how much it may, you may want it to think about things and be able to kind of generate some interesting answers. So that's why for this one, I'm going to go ahead and stick with Opus for this this run through of what we're doing here. And then you can see, user show, that's who I'm logged in as. So that's me. What I do want to, let's see. There is and we're not doing anything with that here, but there is the ability to essentially bring in plugins. And those plugins come from essentially Marketplace. And if I say Marketplace list, we can see that I already do have one registered, and there are some skills that are available from a repository out in GitHub that Anthropics has created called skills. And what skills are is essentially, if I'm, let's go ahead and take a look at them real quick, because I think they may become important when you, there we go. So this skills, as you're working with an agent, you're having a conversation, there might be something that could be handled by a skill that you have in place. So if we look at the list of skills, we can see that it doesn't really go into, but things like creating art or branding guidelines or canvas design. There was a really interesting document, a Slack GIF creator, right? So, hey, if I say create an image for me to use, you don't even have to say Slack, but maybe you could say create an image for me. This one here, if we go in and look at it, the skill, and again, we've talked about front matter up front, but essentially, if something kind of matches that description when you're asking it, this would be a path you would go down. So knowledge and utilities for creating animated GIFs optimized for Slack. So I just said, hey, create me an animated GIF. It might say, well, I've got a skill that does that, right? So now it can use this skill and all of the pieces that are inside of it, which includes a workflow and potentially some code for how you might go ahead and do that. So these are ways to extend essentially the capabilities of your agent without having to have that always be part of the context. So this would only go through when somebody says, hey, something that basically matches the description or where the description might answer the question that's being asked. So bring this back down. So in here, we're not going to, we've got access to a model. I think what we want to do is we've had this conversation, Chris and I, around, hey, how can we, as we start thinking about agents and starting to break the pieces apart, how can we maybe take some of the transcript capabilities that we have? And we've got tons of transcripts at this point, having doing this for well over 100 videos, and for this is our 6th year. So we've got a lot of content out there. Can we do something as part of that process of a video gets completed? Let's get that transcript and let's do some things with it. So I started basically, oops, that's not what we're going to be able to see. 1 second. Oh, cool. Nope, that's the wrong one. All right. Let's just go ahead and I lost it from the clipboard, which happens when things are copying and pasting. So we're just going to basically ask it a question. So what I'm going to do is, before I do that, I'm going to go into what's called plan mode. So if you see down here, we've got this cycle mode, and we do essentially a shift tab on the keyboard. And what that does is that now sends us into good old
okay.
plan mode, right?
Okay. So there was no mode. Okay, I gotcha.
Yep. So no mode is kind of, I've got access to, it's almost like it's almost like the agent mode where I have the ability to do something, whether it's create files or do things against your system. Right now, all I'm really able to do is think about and construct the plan. Now, in the end, it will create a plan MD file, but that's kind of the only thing it can do. Okay. So let's see. Actually, I'm just going to go back over here. So I've tried this before, but what I'm going to do is, because there's a lot here that I started. So let's do this. So basically, we want to plan building out a collection of agents that support a workflow that'll take a video, extract the audio, create a transcript, and then perform another of post-stream activities once we have that transcript. And some of those things that we have there are what agents might do: create a title, create a description, generate the chapter and the tag points inside of there, maybe generate some tags so it's easier for people to find the video, a social media post, maybe thumbnail generation, all of those things that when you think about a production capabilities at the end of doing a video, those are things that you might want to automate, or things that you might make the experience better for your user and your audience, essentially. So one thing I do want to add, though, is something like, I want to use .NET 10, Spire.dev, and in Azure. Okay. So just a little bit more context around it, right? So starting to talk about maybe some of the implementation details, even though you don't need to yet, because it will ask you as you go through it, but this kind of set things off in the, a little more quickly, since we know timing is what it is. So we're going to have this interactive planning mode. So I'm going to hit this. It's going to think.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And, I happen to be kind of, I'm not following along in the CLI, but I just noticed for the first time, I hadn't looked at this in a long time, I guess, is in the GitHub Copilot chat window down in the lower left. I remember when they added that drop down to switch from ask to agent. And I haven't thought about that in a while. And so I clicked on it, and there's also edit and plan.
Right.
And there's even some other agents too. Like there's the AI. I have this AI agent expert that I think came along with the AI toolkit for VS Code extension.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, wow, you turn your back for like 5 minutes and
something new pops in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think since I'll answer this question first. Let's see. I see you already have a producer. Yeah. And so I've tried this a couple of different ways, and as sometimes we do try and plan some things out. Let's create a new separate project so that we can kind of go down a different path here, because I wasn't happy with the path that one went down. So while that's loading, let's go. What would you like to call this project? Naming is always hard.
Yeah, I know. Help us with that, right?
Right. Actually, I'm going to go with a different one, because what happened was in a separate window when I was running through a demo of this, I asked Copilot for a bunch of code names for this, and one that I liked was one called Scribe. So that's what we're going to go with. So nice, simple, single name for the AI agent. So it wants to use semantic kernel, and I get that because it's been around for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and suggest Microsoft agent framework. Let's do that. Transcription services. So how do we want to get the how do we want to take the audio and basically create a transcript out of it? So right now, let's go with the speech services. I think that makes sense, because those services have been around forever, and they have the capability of being able to take speech and make text out of it. And I think it's what we used in the past. But we did try Whisper at one point for one of them. But which LLM provider do you want to use? I'm going to say, how should agents be triggered and coordinated? So these are all the design questions that go beyond just that initial paragraph of what it is that you want to do. So really having a conversation around how we think about this. So I want it to be event driven via event grid, which makes sense. I think this is, let's see. Maybe at this point we can ask it a question. So can you compare? Right, why? I don't want to include a bunch of things in there like cost.
Certainly. If you only need tables, and some of these original tables, blobs, queues, they get overlooked in not just Azure, like just multi-cloud. I feel like some of the original things that made the cloud go, they get overlooked now for these more robust solutions. And hey, depends on what you're trying to do. Certainly, you can look at 4 cents a gig a month.
Yeah,
it's nothing to sneeze at, right? Like that's pretty good.
Between the videos and the transcript files and the audio files, right? Because you figure they're going to go through a pipelining process. So sure, we can. I don't know that we need that complex. I don't know that it needs to be that complex. We could just use table storage for this, I think, or at least start there. And if we hit a wall, we can bounce out. So. Where are we here? Cool. So thinking about social media interactions, and it looks at a bunch of different things like LinkedIn, Blue Sky, blog. Does the initial plan include these agents with placeholder implementations, or focus on the core video first? I would say we would want placeholder agents in there, even though we may or may not get to them or use them. But I think that makes sense. And I'm up if discussion if you feel differently. So
I see what it's saying. I hadn't even thought about that. Okay.
Maybe this is, maybe this is no, let's just focus on the core processing. Let's get to the transcript and get the cool stuff in. And then that can be an add-on thing that we do. Come back to the plan and say, okay, let's iterate on this and add this to the plan.
Okay.
Why my Teams keeps trying to jump in here. Okay, let's try this. All right.
It's so interesting having this conversation and seeing like what it's doing. Like it's still a little disorienting to me anyways.
Yeah, I will say it's it is becoming less so for me because I've been this kind of, I'm not the only app developer in our group, but it is, it's kind of the core thing I do. And having this as a way of being that thing I can bounce ideas off or ask questions about or being able to go down has been super helpful in that aspect of it and learning different things. So, so now we've gotten to this point. We've got our application, or we've got a plan, and we can actually look at that plan by going into Control Y, which brings up a window or a file inside of VS Code. Probably because at some point I said, go ahead and use that for all my VS Code stuff. And then I can switch it over to Markdown here, but there we go. We can see things like all of the decisions we made earlier on or throughout the course of it with the tech stack, right? So being able to say .NET 10, we told it about Azure Framework, we told it about speech services, so and that we wanted to use Foundry. So yeah, it's got all those pieces inside of there. We can see how those things are kind of organized. Where we've got a file or a folder for videos, audio, another one for transcripts. How that video event grid bit happens, how the blob gets created, which kicks off the transaction or the extraction of audio. And once audio lands, we do the same thing, transcript. And once we have that transcript, we can then go ahead and now essentially get out all the generation agents that we have inside of here. It's got a project structure for us, which is pretty cool. So typical, the Aspire app host and the service defaults, and then we've got some functions. Right now they have is a Python Azure function. We could talk about that because one of the things we might want to do is to use, we saw this last time we did a session around N audio to be able to use that as a way of getting the audio bits that we need instead of the FFmpeg, which is typically done through Python. If we think of, they have, and that's something else to think about having whether we want to do this as a function or, can we do this as maybe, as I've seen in other places, we do this as a container using Azure Container Apps. So we still have a trigger that happens that spawns this up, but where it happens and how it happens is one of the things we can look at. By doing it in the container, we might lose the ability to do the connectivity or the binding that happens inside of a function. But that's something, we can talk about those trade-offs, right? Because kind of building that out means a little bit of more tightly working with the Azure environment as opposed to just spinning this up in a container and have some HTTP endpoint trigger it off. I've been saying a lot. Thoughts? Is this kind of...
It's fascinating to me, just not how much it produces, but even things I haven't thought about yet. So that becomes kind of overwhelming. Maybe that takes some getting used to, that you're almost... So I'm torn between the old developer mindset of wanting to wrap your head around everything, which I think is something we've been dealing with as developers like forever.
Right.
But at the same time, having something say, hey, look, I've thought of your infrastructure. I've thought of these things, and we will build them so that it's not, it's not always the thing we're going to do later.
Right.
We'll get around to that. We'll get around to that. I mean, how? Yeah.
And I think that's we kind of went soup to nuts on this. Build me a solution that does this, right? I've done other, and that's a lot to essentially consume. And that's why when we look at what's here, it actually starts breaking. We start seeing, well, how do we break this down into more manageable bites, right? So let's do the project scaffolding as the first bit and get all the pieces in place. Let's do the infrastructure foundation next, so that we've got the biceps for all the various Azure pieces that we need, and start to go out from there. Once we have that in place, let's do the audio extraction part, because that's kind of the first bit that needs to happen. So by breaking, it gets back to, well, it's thought about the whole project. It does give the bits that we want to look at from the development perspective, saying, all right, what are the small bites that we need to be able to focus on? Let's go and get those out, even with individual tasks. inside of here, right? So, creating the project, getting the app host, getting the individual, create the solution and then the individual projects all together, right? So this seems like a good, what else it's doing? So it's, we saw the process of audio extraction, transcript creation, and then spinning off into the various agents, right? Which is something a little more complex that we have to try kind of dig into a little bit. Like, well, what does that mean? Are we kicking them all off at once, or are we having them sequentially go through, and maybe the work from a previous one helps influence the work of a subsequent one? Though, those are things that we can, I guess, look at a lot more closely when we think about the agent framework itself and how we might want to, do some of those things that are inside of here, essentially. And then it's got a space for local development and then Azure deployment. So there's a lot of pieces here, but I think we have something that we can kind of get started with. And maybe in the 20 minutes or so that we have left, let's see kind of what it comes up with. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Cool. So awesome. And it actually has what I think is pretty cool. So it knows that we're in this part. Right now, we're running all of this in this folder here. But because we want to call it this project, let's go ahead. It's going to go ahead and drop it in that subfolder for us. So we don't have to navigate to it, which is great. Okay. So let's do this. So now that we've got that kind of, it's kind of ready. It's like, well, when we're ready to start implementation, let's say start or implement, right? And switch out of plan mode with the shift tab. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to shift out of plan mode. We're going to, what's that? I'm not going to allow all, but I will say, let's go ahead and, this looks great. Let's, okay. Yes. That looks right. So put that new directory in there. So we're going to put that in the source. And we're fine. So that approval was I can approve it. Yes, just do it now. Or what I did was say, anytime you need to do that, let's go ahead. Same with this. Go ahead, and anytime you need to run that command, that's fine. That's okay. So what it's done is actually changed the location where everything happens. Instead of happening at the root folder that we had here, it's actually pushing everything so that it now happens here.
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead and so you can see there. It's
creating a solution and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is stuff that we've done. Like I have become, it's weird. Like everything old is new again, where I find myself wanting to make sure that I know command line for .NET CLI, maybe even some basic PowerShell to do things, just because I think in some respects it translates across machines, your machine, my machine. The age-old problem of sitting down at someone's machine and they've configured their IDE the way they like.
Right.
Which is fine. You should customize it. But then at least we know dropping out here, plus having things be scriptable. I don't have to remember how to do it and what things to click. I can eventually say, I'm doing this a lot. Let me get a script for it.
Exactly. And it's easy. That script could be one of those things that winds up in that skill. And I just say, hey, go ahead and do this for me. Let's see. So it's actually created the class for us. It's just the class defining. Okay. All right. We're just going to say go. We'll check We'll check when we're done. It's interesting. It wanted, well, no, because I said, so it asked me for the first one. It asked me on the first one, and then I said, yes, go ahead and do it. So build. So awesome. It's going to add a git ignore because I don't think we have a git instance created yet. So what it's probably going to do is at the end of this, so it's got the git ignore, it's got a readme file. It will probably be setting itself up to go ahead and essentially when it's finished, do a git add, git commit. So we have all of this ready for phase 2. So this is pretty cool, right?
Yeah. It's like I said, it's just a little.
So I'm going to make it a little more disconcerting. So if I do this.
I mean, I like that they dropped into Azure, right? Which is something I really, a couple years ago, like I really dove deep into to stop using the Windows-based Azure Storage Emulator, which maybe by now is, I don't know what the state of that is now, but this was the future, was Azure Write works everywhere, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We call the scribe, so we do that. And then go ahead and do code. So I've got all the pieces in here. I've got my source code, all the various, including our app host, we're typically used to seeing for Aspire, and it's got our storage with our blobs and our tables, which is great. It's got service default, and then it's got a shared folder for the shared project, which has, I guess, will have things like storage and models and things of that nature in it. So it's pretty good structure, pretty good start. What I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to go into, and what I'm not sure, let me see. Let me go back up one if I do this. Oh, give me this. Okay, so this is interesting, right? So while I was able to control Y and see where it was, this plan file that we have here essentially is stored in this session state that Copilot has.
Oh, okay.
So much like a location that is outside of where we are here. Why is that important? So that session state is something that if we were to say, exit this session because we need, this is all we're going to do for today. We're going to, essentially come, wind down. We can actually come back into the session and continue the conversation here, and continue the work that we're doing. What I want to do is I do want to take this file here because I want to come over here and go back to scribe and do this.
Is this just like trying to get that file out and put it where you can access it later?
Phase 1.
I love how I see so many people like greeting the agent.
Implementation.
saying howdy.
Basically want to ask this Copilot to basically check the work of the other Copilot.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really an interesting idea to me. I am coming through, right? Like you're hearing me or no?
So now it's going back through that directory and it's checking and seeing, well, what actually got created now that you've done this.
So I wasn't sure. Am I coming through on the mic?
Sure. You can go ahead and do a build. That's fine. So it's actually telling me what's been done well. No warnings, no errors. App host properly configured. Source default says open telemetry, which is what we want. But it does have some questions, right? The storage folder is empty, right? The plan shows that blah, blah, blah. So that's fine. We haven't kind of run this yet with that perspective. So I would see that the folders probably wouldn't exist at this point. Using app host CS instead of the parameter. Not wrong, just curious. I think that's what we switched to, right? In the latest version of Aspire,
so I'm not
app host CS instead of program.
I'm not 100% sure if you're hearing me right now.
Programs.
So we're going to test with the audience here because I don't think Rich is hearing me. But StreamYard seems to think that I'm transmitting. So now Rich is muted. But
there we go.
Okay. So a second ago, like StreamYard showed me transmitting, but it kind of seemed like you didn't hear me.
I couldn't hear you. It was on my end.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. All right. So while you were doing this, bringing up the second Copilot, I thought, this concept of like, let's have an agent go over the other agent's work. It's interesting.
What is?
So the whole idea of like, I asked an agent to do some work, and so let me ask another one, hey, assess the work of the original agent. I think it's interesting. That's all.
And if I really wanted to make it interesting, I probably should have done something like this. And said, hey, let's go ahead and use Gemini Pro.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Switch. Okay.
And see if the different model, because different models tend to focus on different things. So we'll let that kind of think essentially about it. So this is right. So cool. We'll let that go ahead and think for a minute because we're kind of winding down to the end, but maybe we'll kick off phase 2 and see what that looks like. Now, the thing I probably should have done was clear the history because it has the history of what Opus was asking about. So hopefully it will ignore that. But that last one here is kind of interesting. Model consideration that the agent output.content is a single string. But chapters agent will likely output structured data with timestamps and titles. Consider making this more flexible, or we serialize to JSON. So it might be something we want to make sure we take a look at. We don't have tests, so that's a good comment. That we probably should have some tests inside of there. Need to ensure. Okay. Yeah, we talked about that. That's fine. And then same thing with that. So, okay, those are pretty good. I mean, we could do something where we say,
does the app like run with these placeholders right now?
Does the app, I'm sorry?
Does this does this application run with these placeholders? I mean, just to kind of have a stopping point, maybe.
Yeah, it does build.
Here's where we ended up, you know?
I think we can make it run. Can you include the missing test project feature activity in the plan? So it came up with something interesting. So what I wanted to do is go ahead and update the plan so that we make sure we don't lose this part of the conversation. But I'm going to go ahead and move on with the next phase. So it's not something we're going to handle. So we'll come back over to this window and say, this looks great. Can you mark this one as completed in the plan? That appropriate comment. Is 2. Cool. Yeah. So this one's a little eager because it kind of wants to says, well, I'm interested now. I want to keep going.
Yeah, of course. It's so funny to think about. Like, hey, I'm invested. Like a TV show that I want to keep watching. Oh my gosh, it's funny. I can't help but laugh a little bit because it all feels like science fiction.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and especially when you think of, I mean, well, it's been said in a couple different places, right? There was the comment that was made that, you know, you've got developers who have 6-week sprints and they're able to do the work that they used to do in 6 weeks in 1 week because they basically have these agents going against each other. One writes the code, another agent tests it and makes the changes, and they iterate back and forth until they're both happy with what's being created. And if you just have that to, right now I'm doing this manually, we're kind of going through and checking the work. But if you get this in a routine and your prompts are good enough that those things can automate, these can be very productive, even though they can be a little costly. They're certainly running, you know, essentially, but, you know, more than just the 8 hours that us as a developer might work.
Right. And, you know, so it's not something that I've really demonstrated on the show, or I mean, I know we have used maybe GitHub Copilot a little bit. This seems more comprehensive. And then what you just said is like more comprehensive still, to say a team of agents. And, you know, this word agent is starting to get overloaded a little for me. Not that it is. I'm not saying that it really is, but that the pizza bot is, we're trying to build an agent, but this is using agents. And then, but then we want to create our own agents using like a feature like GitHub's. And I think it's fair to say this is GitHub's feature, the GitHub agent modes. They were going to call it chat modes, but I think it's called agent. Maybe it's called agent instructions or agent modes. I forget. I'm sorry that I don't have the exact term.
That's okay. You have GitHub Copilot agents that you can run in the cloud essentially. And
those instructions are just right in your repo. They're just there. So now that gives them a portability in a way where, you know, we're trying to create the pizza bot agent, but it's got to run. You got to run it.
Yeah.
Although, of course, one of the things I know it's going way beyond the Dev Days talk, but I think we want to make it more accessible. Like somebody could just go order a fake pizza on a website, which is not part of the demo. It's kind of where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
But you know, even this idea of having a tool like this create your agent instructions that you're going to put in your repo, you don't have to dream it up yourself, but then it feels really it's almost like Turtles All the Way Down feeling, or some old science fiction movies where either a droid or a computer, or like Star Trek, you know, shall I do this for you, Captain? And you say, sure, go ahead. And I know there's concerns about getting it right. You know, all of these tools are constantly telling you AI can make mistakes. Make sure you check your work. And I think now as a developer, I'm trying to decide what, if it produces so much, how do maybe I can't possibly check it all. So how do you develop this trust in it? I mean, these are large issues that while it's sitting here thinking, and hopefully we get to explore them. And I think that's one of the things that I think I like and people do like about this show is that we, here we are going line by line and learning from each step. And hopefully that helps people that are watching too. So
definitely. Yeah, no, this is, so we can, we'll let this run. What'll probably happen is when we come back, if we go back and look at, see, can I do this here? Give me a new VS Code. And let's do file, show. Now the script there, open a file. I can't find that. That's interesting. Yeah. What I was trying to do was go back to the plan file, but essentially, what I'll probably do in the meantime is get that into the project itself, because it's kind of where that plan should really live. If I do from here and I do Control Y, can I see it? Yeah, I can. Okay, cool. So this essentially is the plan that we're working on. So we just did phase 2. Where's phase 2?
And that's a markdown file, right? So
correct.
If you preview it, I'm just curious what it looked like with the graphing there. That it
did.
Yes. Because I don't think. Well, let's see what it did. So I see. Okay. So even up higher, it just used plain old, like a code-based view there, which is fine. I mean, that worked. I got to thinking like, hey, can you convert that to a mermaid? Yeah. Right. So
that'll be something to do, because it certainly can do that. We've tried similar things on other shows.
I'll tell you what, making those documents are tedious.
Yeah.
But they're nice. I really do like having even these diagrams as code. It really gets addictive. Like everything is code. Infrastructure's code.
Right.
Diagrams is code, because it cleanly goes into a repo really well, and people can view it on multiple machines. You're not asking them to get special software or anything. Just hey, just open it. It works. So okay.
Seems to be the universal way of creating that document content, and I'm actually trying to lean more into that than spinning up some of the more proprietary content.
Right. All right. So hey, I'm going to switch us back.
Go for it.
And just for a quick update, people I know, I hope are looking forward to the Pizza Bot. I have learned a few things since I think when I started this, and I was translating the Python code, and I saw a code that was basically like using a project client to create an agent. That when I was researching that in C#, that naturally led me to the persistent agents client library, which is like a fundamental building block in most layers, architectural layers. It is, depending on how you structure it, it's either the top or the bottom, and you build. I guess it's the bottom. You build on top of it. It's like one step away from making the REST API calls yourself, from what I can tell. A little bit of management there, but for the most part, you're not that far away. So I think that was a mistake on my part, because it looks like that those same function calls in Python are part of a more integrated API. So when I was getting frustrated not finding all the companion calls, that kind of explains it.
Yeah.
So certainly working to translate the app to use a more, the word modern, like what does that mean? Like 6 weeks?
Right.
6 weeks modern? A more modern approach, perhaps even with Agent Framework. But have you even found that there's some interesting implications in there? Are you using the Foundry SDK, or are you using the OpenAI version of the SDK that's based on the OpenAI protocol versus the more direct Foundry protocol? And there's value to both.
Right.
So in some respects, I'm almost, in a way, I feel like I'm kind of restarting somewhat, but I want to get that done. I want to replicate the Dev Days video. That's step one. And once that's working with the existing tools in place that Gustavo Cordito already had posted with the website and the tracking app and all that, then I think we could say, okay, now how do we replicate those apps? And maybe those will be interesting places to look at something like, is this an Azure container app? Is it, what is it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's some, how do you get it off your machine, and what's the right way to, what's a good thing to deploy? Maybe try a couple different things, because that'd be fun.
Yeah, I would love for somebody watching our show to say, hey, I want to do this, clone a repo. I don't know if it's an AZD up after that. Like, look, I cloned the repo, AZD up. I got the resources. It's my own version of it. That could be, that's where I want to get to. So in any case, thanks for this demo today of Copilot CLI. I definitely want to understand more. Like, the plan file is really cool. It even seemed like it was checking things off as it was doing it, which is really
and committing it to the Git repository. And there's all kinds of things we could do with it once we get to that point. So.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. It's exciting. I want to learn definitely like how to deal with this so that we're productive. I think that's what you're doing too. And hopefully that helps the audience. So hopefully there'll be a couple more shows this week. I know a lot of people ask us for a schedule, but with our actual, we have jobs. So sometimes that gets in the way, but looking forward to getting back to all of these things. So really cool, Rich. And now I'm excited to try out the Copilot CLI a little bit later. And we'll share it with everybody here. And
I think that's awesome. I think that's why I do this. It's hopefully, let's talk about it, get you excited to go try it. Because if you spend 10 minutes trying to do something with it, that's going to help you understand it that much more. So
yeah. All right.
Cool.
Great.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, awesome, everybody. Listen, everybody have a great Monday morning. I wish it was Monday afternoon, right? Everybody have a great Monday morning. For Rich, I'm Chris, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.